Mark Selby, how are we, sir?
Mr. Matthew Gordon, doing very well.
I'm glad to hear it. Any hangovers from PDAC, or are you recovering?
Recovering, actually, yep. Getting some a little bit of quality time at home, so which is good. Yep.
Okay. Well, we better get into this. It's a little bit quiet at the moment, but let's start with the usual, which is what's happening in the markets and nickel price.
Yeah. So, believe it or not, prices don't go up all the time. So, after the big move, we moved up about 15-16% in about 4 weeks. We've given up a little bit of that, and we've retraced down to about 17,500, so just under $8 a pound, which is about $1,000 off the recent high. But again, importantly, we're more than 10% off the bottom. So, you never, any of these moves never happen in a straight line. So this kind of pullback is exactly what you expect. Good news is, in China, the restocking that we expected to happen in the battery sector is well underway after another, last week we saw prices move higher. They've moved higher again. So sulphate prices are up another 2% in China. The downside is stainless is looking a little sluggish. So stainless was a surprise last year in terms of demand and was still relatively strong through year end. But, I think maybe people got a little bit ahead of themselves. And so, we're starting to see some stainless inventories pile up, starting to see stainless prices come off a little bit. So, I think the stainless markets are going to are being a little sluggish. And, realistically, I think, to see us, make another leg higher in the nickel price, you'd want to see both the battery prices and stainless prices moving higher. So, I think, what that signals is, I wouldn't be surprised to see us consolidate in the 17,500 range for the next couple months. Until, again, we should see both batteries and stainless moving higher, but it's going to take us, a few more months to get there. And again, by the end of the year, I said we're going to get, back up to, just over $20,000 a ton. Again, we're a third of the way already, and we still have 9 months of the year to go. So I think that we're still well on track for that.
Talk to me about China, because I was having a conversation with a fund manager from in Hong Kong this morning, and he was kind of curious as to my view on China and in the context of everything that's going on out there, U.S. elections and so forth. What were the big problems ahead of me? Would we be deploying capital, et cetera? Just trying to get a sense of what we in the West think. I mean, how are you viewing China's influence on nickel performance this year? What should we be looking at from over in Asia?
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, China's where most of the battery materials are made. So, it's China from that perspective, because global EVs, are still going to grow at pretty healthy rates. So not expecting any real slowdown in demand from that sector. And again, as we said, we, expect to see a pretty big pickup. So nickel demand from the EV battery sector should be very strong through the year. On the stainless side, again, I think, China's trying to continue to try and stimulate the economy. So, I think any slowdown in the Chinese economy will be met by more and more stimulus, which should be also supportive for stainless prices going forward. So, I'm not that concerned in terms of nickel demand in China at this point. And then in terms of, U.S. elections and so forth, the nice thing is, one of the very, very few things that has bipartisan support is getting China out of the critical mineral supply chain. So, as a North American nickel development project, really doesn't matter to us if the Republicans or the Democrats are in the White House. Both are going to be very supportive. And again, even when I started the company, it was the Republicans in the White House, and they reached out after forming the company after about 7 weeks. So, they are very, again, but both parties are very supportive. So whatever happens, the election, not too fussed about it either.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll sort of sit back and see how nickel price rolls out over the next few weeks and months. Let's get into company news if we can. You put out a bit of news on Monday, Canada Nickel. I'm quite pleased with that, aren't you?
Oh, very, very much so. So, Reid was the target that we drilled, one of the first regional properties that we drilled. We drilled 16 holes using free provincial geophysics to guide those holes, and all 16 holes hit. This is the first for the results for the first hole of the new program, and was the best to date. Almost 700 meters of 0.25% nickel, basically top to bottom. It still ended in mineralization, including 140 meters of about 0.32, and an even higher grade section, about 24 meters at 0.4. So good to see that higher grade core sitting there and big, long widths of material. The other thing with Reid is we haven't got the assays back, but we've completed one section across the center core of the ore body. And so we've confirmed that the mineralization is, 800 meters wide, or twice the width of what we have at Crawford. So, what we're looking at, dimensions wise, is something targets about 2 kilometers long, 800 plus meters wide, and down to, we've drilled down to a depth of 600 plus meters. If you multiply that through, that gets you to several billion tons of additional resource. So very, very happy with how Reid has got started. The other, discovery was Newmarket. So, this year we're planning to put out 7 resources over the next 15 months and make 6 additional discoveries. Reid Newmarket's the first of those new discoveries. So plugged in 2 holes at the end of a very long, if you look at the graphic in the presentation, very long structure. It's over 7 kilometers long. And just because of access in the wintertime, there's a bunch of snowmobile trails in the area, and it's not safe to be pulling drill rigs through snowmobile trails where people are traveling at very high speeds. So there's only one area that we could easily access. And so we actually, were at the worst part of the target that we were looking to drill, and we got 370 meters at 0.24% nickel. That was well serpentinized. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking for. And the fact that, there are some historic drill holes with a few assay intervals over 0.3%, more than 7 kilometers away, is very, very exciting. And both of these targets are bigger than Crawford. So, as we said, we think Crawford's going to be the first project, but, we have yet to discover the best project so far.
Okay. And how much more drilling to come?
Oh, we've got, we did $35 million flow-through raise at the beginning of the year. So, you're going to see tens of thousands of meters get drilled, each month through the course of this year. So, lots of results to come. We've got 4 rigs turning right now, and we've just added, we'll have a 5th rig starting on April 1st. So
watch this space, folks. Watch this space. Okay. Spruce Ridge, what are they up to?
Yes. So Spruce Ridge, they were involved originally at the start of Crawford. They've now refocused. They picked up a laterite project in Oregon. Oregon's one of the few places in the United States where you can find nickel. There was a nickel laterite operation that was there for many decades. For most of the 1900s, that operation in Riddle, Oregon, was the only nickel production in the United States. Obviously, the U.S. is always a little challenging from a permitting perspective, but they've now picked up 2 other properties in the Oregon area, so they've got a pretty sizable package there. And the nice thing is, that the laterite, they had resources done and some historical, advanced historical work done on it. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So definitely one to keep an eye on. The other piece of news, unfortunately, Poseidon Nickel, a company called Minres, has basically picked up their Lake Johnson mill. This was a past producing nickel operation. It was Emily Ann and Maggie Hayes. It operated back in the 2000s. I think a smart move by Minres. There's a lot of lithium in Western Australia, and a shortage of places to sort of process that ore. So they've acquired that land package and the mill, and they're going to convert the mill to process lithium ore going forward. So interesting to see that development.
Yeah. Strange one. We shall see how things pan out over there. And then finally, one who's been on the show a few times. We've talked about a few times. FPX Nickel. How things going down there?
Yeah, so it's good to see they and should have talked about this last week, missed it, but they about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago put out sort of their path forward in terms of advancing their project. Again, it's one of the few projects that's in the pipeline and a credible path to production. So their focus this year is basically, getting all the work they need to get done so they can start their environmental assessment process in the first quarter of next year. I'm not sure what their timeline is. Ours from the start of the federal process was about 3 years. So this would, if things pan out as expected for them, they could be, potentially shovels in the ground in the first part of 2028.
Right. Well, I think their end is quite a quiet week in the world of nickel. Expectations for the, Q2. What else? What do you think we're going to be looking forward to?
Yeah, I think again on the nickel front, I think we're going to spend the next 4 to 6 weeks here consolidating the gains that we've had in nickel prices. The tough part is, we're now kind of sort of 6 months into sort of down nickel prices. And so not surprisingly, people haven't raised a lot of money. So you're not really going to see a lot of news flow here because people haven't been able to raise the money to do the drilling they need. So for us, it's great because, at Canada Nickel, because we were one of the few companies that could raise money. So, we're going to have, a big portion of the airspace for the next 3 or 4 months until people start coming back around and realizing that nickel is not in a massive surplus, as we talked about on a few shows, and the future looks pretty good. So it's nice to have that wide open runway for us, for the next 3 or 4 months.
Mark, speak to you next week.
Sounds good.